Hello, my name is Mitch, and I draw Blood Force. And today we're going to be taking a look at another classic comic book, 1991's What If number 24. Huh? So, so, well, when I originally put this together, I was thinking nobody was going to know who What If is. Well, yeah, actually, quite a few people have probably heard of the animated show. Which I haven't watched, but I assume that the conceit is pretty much like the comic book, where the Watcher, who's a character, doesn't matter, oversees humanity and has access to branching timelines in the Marvel Universe. So we take a look at major events in the history of Marvel Universe and go, well, what if this happened? That's the title, you know. And it started in the 70s, 1977. First issue was What If Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four? And that was based off of Amazing Spider-Man #1, where a young Spider-Man doesn't know what to do with these new powers, goes to the Fantastic Four, and, tries to fight them and be like, hey, can I join your team? And they kick him out, and they're like, no, go away. Icky. And #1, of course, of What If, he joins them up, and something happens. I don't think I ever read it. And that series goes for 47 issues. It's like bi-monthly, and goes for about 7 years. It's a pretty good run. And towards the end of the run, you get some great covers from like Michael Golden and Bill Sienkiewicz. The actual artists on the book are the regular guys. You got like Sal Buscema and Ron Frenz, which whatever. But the last one is number 47, and that's What If Loki Had Thor's Hammer, which has just one of the best covers of any of these What If books. I'll try and put it up here. It's just friggin' dope. And that one appears to be drawn by Kelly Jones. So that one might be worth tracking down. That sounds interesting. So that's ending in 1984. They do a one-shot somewhere a couple years later. And then 1989, they go, let's start that up again. And they started with What If the High Evolutionary the Evolutionary War or something. I wasn't reading comics at the time. I'm not too familiar with what the Evolutionary War is about. But What If was kind of, in addition to just having some fun with Marvel history, it was sort of a proving ground for young artists as well. So in some of those early What If issues, you'll get like Ron Lim, you'll get Greg Capullo did a couple, like right at the beginning of his career. You'll get some, who else is in there? I don't know, there's a couple other people. Jim Valentino did quite a few where he first was drawing and then was writing and drawing. Rob Liefeld did one where he was doing the penciling over Jim Valentino breakdowns when Jim Valentino did the script. And that might be one worth taking a look at some point. This one here, of course, is number 24, so this is 1991. This was in that first batch of comics I picked up right at the beginning, of April 1991. And so I didn't know what any of this stuff was. Really, I didn't really know who Wolverine was, I think. I kind of did from the Marvel cards. I didn't know who Jean Grey was. I kind of knew who the Punisher was. I mean, Punisher was big in the 80s. That image of one of the Punisher War Journal, like number 7 or something, where Wolverine's got the claws out through the Punisher symbol, that was huge when I was in middle school. So I wasn't too familiar with what the What If comics were about, but the great thing about What If comics was that they told you what they were about. This whole little cover page here gave you a breakdown on what the source material was for this particular story. In this case, that's Uncanny X-Men number 159. It's a weird little one-shot issue where, for some reason, Dracula guest stars, and he turns Storm into a vampire. The X-Men try and stop him. They got to beat up Dracula, but they can't because he's too fictional. He's more fictional than them. And that doesn't mean anything. But Storm just refuses to become evil, and he goes, oh man, really? And he turns her not vampire anymore, takes the vampire out of her, and just goes away. And that's the last we see of Dracula in X-Men comics. And so the conceit of this, of course, is what if that hadn't happened? They can't beat up Dracula. They get knocked out. And in the original comic, Storm hits him with the lightning. In this version, she hits the X-Men with the lightning. And Vampire, Dr. Vampire, Dracula, he turns all the X-Men into vampires themselves. And one of the things about this issue that really caught my eye, even when I was like really young, I really dug the art on this one. This is by Tom Morgan, who I can't imagine a lot of people are familiar with. It's tough finding a record of what exactly he drew. Wikipedia knows about like 4 comics, like 4 titles that he ever drew. It appears to be a lot more than that. I know about a couple. This is the first time I saw him, and then I saw him on Punisher 2099. And I remember because I loved how this looked, and I heard Punisher 2099 was coming out. I'm like, oh man, that's gonna be really good if that Tom Morgan guy's drawing that again. And I saw it; it looked like ass. And part of me's got to wonder if it's the inking, but like, it's Jimmy Palmiotti. Like, you wouldn't think it would be, right? And I looked at who inked this, and it's Tom Morgan. So I wonder if it's just a matter of he got a bunch of time to do this. And the monthly schedule just made his stuff look like dog shit. That could be the case. So the deal here, of course, 3 days after Dracula kills the X-Men, he comes back to bring them back to life. Colossus and Nightcrawler, they're too stupid, so they become the regular, like, henchmen vampires. They're all mindless and shit. But it's 1991, and Wolverine is the most badass character in comics. So he's going to be a leader vampire. You know that shit. And he's so badass that he can turn into mist immediately after becoming a vampire, and then turn into a wolf. And Dracula's like, what? But I thought I was the most badass vampire. Mega Man 3, not even 4, eh? 1991 was pretty good. And Wolverine makes short work of Dracula, drinks Dracula's blood, and as a half wolf, half Wolverine, cuts Dracula's head off. And I'm completely on board here as an 11-year-old. This is just the best looking shit. You know. Apart from the colors, I don't know. It feels like sometimes the colors is helping them out here, but sometimes this shit gets really muddy. Like, why's Dracula's face got to go gray? Is that like trying to be like, oh, he's got no blood in him anymore? Like he should be like pale. That should be the idea. Anyway, so now Wolverine's the undisputed king of the vampires. And the vampires are going to go on a rampage. They're going to turn all the mutants into vampires, because if you have vampires with superpowers, that's even worse than regular vampires that have just normal vampire superpowers, right? Like, if you can turn into mist, but you can also, like, I don't know, absorb solar energy? Like, so you're solar energy mist? That's worse somehow, right? Anyway, so... the vampires are all going to descend on New York, on the human population. That one doesn't look that great. But, like, the rest of the shit does. Like, man, Tom Morgan had, like, one issue where he just knocked it out of the park. And, yeah, it just never was that good again, as far as I can tell, anyway. There's probably, like, Tom Morgan issues out there somewhere that look as good as this. I've just never seen them. So... anyway, Wolverine he's in charge of all the vampires, and he's directing where they're going to go to take over first New York, then America, then the world. Yahaha. And one of the first things they got to do is they got to kill Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange knows about evil, mystical, vampire-y shit. So he sends the Juggernaut to do it, because the Juggernaut is stealthy? Maybe not, but apparently he didn't hear him coming. So I don't know what the shit that's about. There's nothing here about him, like, damping the sound. Doesn't matter. But, yeah, breaks his spine, breaks his neck, and, bites him but doesn't turn him into a vampire. Maybe, like, tears his throat out. I'm not even sure. Regardless, Doctor Strange dies horrifically. And again, I'm fully on board here. And Logan's not going to take any chances with him coming back to life and maybe being as super badass as Logan is, because you can't have that. So he's just going to feed his body to the alligators. So, I'm just going to ignore that. They turn to the vampires turn, and they turn other superheroes. Some of them they turn into vampires. Some of them they just flat out kill, assumingly because Logan doesn't want anybody challenging his rule. And Doctor Strange, because he's all about that astral plane life, being dead is no big deal for him. So he's going to commune with the Ancient One, and then come back to Earth. What feels like several months later, maybe a year, where you get all these human minions. Oh, what's the word? Familiars. Running around, and just like the streets are empty, and America is run by vampires. And I'm quite sure I stole this basis for a story when I was like 11 or 12. And the only man alive is the Punisher. And he's going to shoot around all the minions. He didn't actually shoot them. Oh, no, he got that guy. Way to go, Frank. And so the ghost of Doctor Strange communes with Frank, and he's going to give him the cloak. I don't remember what the cloak's called. Doesn't matter. We all know the cloak from the movies, right? And Frank's got to get to Doctor Strange's house, where the mutant vampires are all ready for him to come out, to show up. And he just kills them all because he's the Punisher, and he's just about as badass as Wolverine. Like, just a smidge less. Because, again, it's 1991. And he's going to kill the Juggernaut, no problem. I mean, Doctor Strange would not have been a challenge to Wolverine. Punisher might, though. And so he's killed all of Logan's henchmen, and then Logan shows up, and he's got his own Dracula cape, so you know he means business. And a skull belt. He's been accessorizing. This is a pretty cool shot, actually. And, yeah, so Punisher uses all his bullets on Misty Wolverine, and Wolverine takes the cape off him so he can't fly around or do his light show. So now it's just mano a mano, and I guess Wolverine's going to stop using his vampire powers. I don't know, for some reason. And, Punisher just flat out sticks Wolverine. And he's going to kill him, but he accidentally kills Shadowcat, gets in the way. And Wolverine sticks Punisher right back. And this series got a little violent every once in a while. Much more violent than I expected. You would have expected from some PG, G-rated Marvel comics in 1991. Just like the run-of-the-mill stuff. But that was the deal that What If could do, where, it's like DC Elseworlds, where you can make up anything so you can kill anybody you like, right? And so the fact that Shadowcat got killed, it's tearing Wolverine up, and it's pitting the two sides of himself against himself. He's got the lineage of Dracula, the lineage of evil, but he's also got the lineage of Xavier. And oh shit, wow, ooh, what do I do? And of course it's Wolverine, and he's super badass, but he's also super good badass. What? And he's gonna read from a book in Doctor Strange's house, kill all the vampires, especially Spider-Man. Fuck you, buddy. And everybody turns into smoke and ash, and Spider-Man don't feel so good. The end. Oh boy. Yeah, no, I thought this comic was just friggin' awesome when I was 11, man. I mean, this got me buying What If comics for like a year after this. Like this was one of the, yeah, I probably gave up on a few comics before I gave up on What If, and this is the best I ever saw it. This one's written by Roy Thomas, who was like he's like an old school comics guy. I thought he was the guy who wrote the legendary, like there's like a legendary Spider-Man run in the 70s, but I think that's Jerry Conway. But he's been around since at Marvel and DC since the 60s. He wrote like some of the first X-Men books, and I mean like from number 20. And this is all pretty good. It's pretty concise. It's great one-shot storytelling. And yeah, Tom Morgan, you know, he might not have done much else, at least in terms of drawing. I think he's an editor now. It's weird. But he had one good issue, I'll tell you that. And I was down for anything to do with Dracula back in the day. There just wasn't enough comics with Dracula. And there's like all sorts of, you know, Dracula in comics it has like a rich history. I'm sure like plenty of people are probably familiar with the Tomb of Dracula comic that came out in the 70s, where Dracula had his own comic book, where he was the protagonist. And he wasn't a good guy, I don't think. I'm pretty sure I haven't read too many, like any of them. But yeah, like it was like villain Dracula. And it went for like 70 issues. It's like ridiculous. And like Dracula guest starring in everything. Yeah, they did the there was the adaptation of the movie, the Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1993, where the adaptation was done by Mike Mignola. It looks fantastic. I've got 3 issues of that. I've got the 4th one coming on the way. I'm quite pleased about that. Yeah, no, Dracula in comics is just that's just a natural combination. Should always happen. There should always be more Dracula, and it seems to keep happening. So that's good stuff. And I will find a way to maybe possibly put Dracula in Blood Force. Maybe. It's tough because you know like it's Blood Force is like an Image Comics comic, so you know if you're putting Dracula in there, you're giving him all sorts of like purple metal armor with spikes all over it, and like a zombie face, and that's gonna be Dracula. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to do Dracula, but you can't put him in here. You can't put Dracula in an Image comic in a tux, you know, with a goatee. Might be able to do the goatee. It is 1991. I can cut his head off. There is always that. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. This was a strange one. I'm waiting on some issues to come. Is the thing. So it's like, well, I've been thinking about like, what if I talked about this issue for a little while. But one of the things I'm kind of thought about doing was the second wave of Image number 1s, because there was that first wave, Spawn number 1, Wildcats, Youngblood, all the ones I've done previously, and then because those were all designed to be limited series, there was the second wave where they went, okay, no, these are going to be the full series, and it's like, how did they do those differently? I like to compare the two. In some cases, with like Wildcats, they just continued it, but number 5 really is kind of the reboot. Same with Youngblood, number 5. So, yeah, I've got a couple of those coming, like the Savage Dragon Volume 2, number 1, Cyberforce Volume 2, number 1. So those will be interesting to take a look at. So, we'll see those eventually. In the meantime, please hit like if you like this video, hit subscribe, hit the notifications. Follow me on Twitter at Team Blood Force. Please subscribe on my Patreon. That's where I put all my original artwork and all these videos. Of course, except I also put them on YouTube. But you're on YouTube. You should be on Patreon too. We should all be everywhere all at once. It's the internet. You can do that. And most of all,